everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Broad Podcaster with me, Jennifer Fiero, here in the Highland Lakes, joined once again with Daniel Clifton. Daniel covers Canyon Lake football for us, and I know that it's Burnet Marble Falls week, but before we get started on that, Daniel and I attended the Canyon Lake Marble Falls game. You and I didn't get a chance to talk about that game. Was there anything about the Canyon Lake Marble Falls game that stood out to you?
I guess I was surprised it was such a lopsided victory for Canyon Lake.
Okay.
I don't know what going into what I expected. I think it was just a little shock. I thought Marble Falls would put more points on the board, and so yeah. Go ahead.
Well, when you say that, let's dive a little bit more into it because I also have my thoughts on it. Both teams were 1-4 going into the game. Canyon Lake won 52-13. They had scored, I think, on 5 of 7 first half drives at one point. Three
Yeah.
of them came off of skinny post passes. Marble Falls has really Leander Glenn exposed that in the very first scrimmage in August of with the skinny post. Marble Falls, there's something there about the skinny post that passing teams have been able to take advantage of that. Canyon Lake did a great job of seeing that, finding the matchups, and then going in and converting. There were a couple of fumbles because I believe Canyon Lake scored on their opening drive. Marble Falls got the ball, ran one or maybe 3 plays and fumbled. Canyon Lake scored immediately on the very next play. And in about 4 to 5 minutes, Canyon Lake was up 14-0. And after that, everything was kind of a wash. I thought that Marble Falls got the majority of the 50-50 calls. And I'm thinking specifically of the touchback where Canyon Lake fumbled the ball. It looked like they were going to go in and score. The ball rolls out of bounds. And Canyon Lake doesn't get the ruling by the referees is it's a touchback. Marble Falls gets the ball back, and so Canyon misses that scoring opportunity late in the first half. But at that point, it didn't matter. I think Canyon Lake was up 35-7 at the half, and then in the second half, Canyon Lake just ran right with their slot T offense. It was a quick second half. They just ran it down Marble Falls' throat. I have a concern just looking at the Mustangs after the game. I felt like Marble Falls was a beaten up team. I counted about 4 or 5 kids, maybe 6 kids who'd already had their shoulder pads off. 2 or 3 of them were already had ice packs on. And I'm sure you've heard this because after covering Brian Herman in his slot T for the last 4+ years, the belief is that when a team faces a slot T opponent one week, they are so beaten up from that team that it affects the next game. And that is a concern for me going into Burnet Marble Falls.
Yeah. I'd like to go back real quick about the skinny post, that play, because the thing that shocked me, and this is a hats off to the Canyon Lake coaching staff, because they must have realized that weak spot, because they came out passing quick, and they usually don't. They usually run that slot T and say, you got to stop the run. And then once you stop the run, we'll throw a pass. But that time they came out passing, which I was like, I was like, what team is this? But I think you're right. I think they knew that the skinny post was a weakness for Marble Falls, and they exploited it. Yeah. And efficiently. But you're right. When you play that slot T, then next week you're hurting. It's a bruiser. It is a bruiser.
Yeah. I met with Brian Herman yesterday for his usual. He does his media day on Tuesdays, and the thing that is a concern is they're not getting enough explosive plays from the slot T, and they use a lot of different ball carriers right now. I remember in year 2 when Marble Falls advanced to the playoffs, they had one fullback, Hayden Hoover, one. And then when they advanced the playoffs the following year, they had more to pick from. But at that point, there was no doubt that Caleb Vidal was the fastest kid in the program, fastest. Yeah. So he was at the tailback position. Right now, the best player on that team is Jamie Castillo, number 7. And Jamie's the one who had the two big explosive runs in the second half, one for about 60 yards and then another one for 44 yards. I am curious to see what they will do with Jamie, because the thing that stayed with me from yesterday's interview with Herman is that he said that they were trying to figure out how to be more explosive because they used quite a few ball carriers. And I realized part of that, he'll never say this, but part of that is because of depth, that they have to rely on some of the same players to play offense and defense. And you have to be able to give them one or two plays to catch their breaths. And so it's a trade. So which poison are you? I hate to say, what is the
Well,
lesser? You know what I mean? Because
yeah.
Jamie Castillo is so valuable as a linebacker slash hybrid in the Fox position, fast enough to be a defensive back, strong enough to be a linebacker. So he does a lot of chasing. And I have seen him run down ball carriers as a defender. But because he is so vital on defense, you have to be able to use him there. And that means his availability may be limited on offense. And you don't want your fastest ball carrier on the sideline either.
Yeah. And I think what the interesting you said about having a lot of options, like a lot of people carry the ball. I sometimes wonder, you hear a lot about that from coaches sometimes, but you're right. I wonder if that's a curse more than a blessing, because then you got all these, well, the defense doesn't know who to watch maybe, but at the same point, none of them really like establish a rhythm, if that makes sense. And, last year we talked about Canyon Lake had Elijah Johnson, and he just would pummel you, and you could give him a break by handing off to, somebody at Justin Abbott or, one of the Anderson boys, or take it. But yeah, sometimes I wonder if you have so many choices, if that's not a hindrance at times too. Oh, we got a lot of offensive weapons. Well, I mean, I think that could be a negative. And I think that in case what you're talking about Marble Falls, it may be right now.
I'd rather, and I hope it's right on your end, because I do know this. The emphasis this week has with the Mustangs. I haven't had a chance to talk to Brian Wood yet. The emphasis with the Mustangs has been to be more explosive and to figure out a way to be more explosive. They just looking at my stat sheet, I can only recall the Mustangs having two explosive plays, and I define explosive plays as having a run play of 10 yards or more, or having a passing play of 15 yards or more. I know when I know that Michael McLeod, who's the head coach at Mason, I think his explosive is 15 yards per run and 20 yards per pass. But they are a slot T offense as well. And I think that's a big ask for high school athletes. But
Yeah.
regardless, that's how he sees things. And that seems to be a formula that works for him. Is there anything else about the Canyon Lake game that stood out to you that you want to mention from last week?
I think not really. I was glad to see on Canyon Lake's part to get a big score. I think coming away from that game, there was I think the Canyon Lake team has a burst of confidence. There were so many unknowns going into the game, and you still have questions and stuff, valid, but at that point there may have been some doubting themselves, and now I think coming back, it's like, whoa, we just put 52 points up. We held the team to under 20. So I think they've got a boost of confidence. So I think if there's one thing that came other than the win, they needed that win. You got to start district with a win the best you can. And then was a boost of confidence the Hawks felt.
See, and I thought that what I had said to Coach Harmon at the end of the game is I felt very strongly that Canyon Lake played like a team that was playing for its season. And I got that the way that they stepped on that field Friday night was that's how it looked to me. A team that thought, this is our season on the line, got to get a win, whether it's by 1 or 100, got to get a win. And I really felt like they played that way for 4 quarters. I didn't feel like there was a let up at any time on any side of the ball or in special teams.
Yeah. And their defense even late in the game, their defense was really playing, even though they had the game in hand. The defense came in we're just gonna play. We're gonna play everything we got, lay down the field. We're not gonna take it easy. And so yeah, I think you're right. I think Coach Drum got 4 good quarters out of that team last Friday.
Yeah. Okay. Stay with us. We're going to close out this segment. We are going to get into the Burnet Marble Falls game. I promise. Close this segment out. Stay tuned for segment number 2. I'm Jennifer Fierro, podcaster here in the Highland Lakes with Daniel Clifton. Go to segment number 2. We'll join you right now.